Hello and welcome to a quick Kickstarter preview, and we're going to be looking at the expansion to Petrichor, which is currently on Kickstarter, presented to us by the fabulous Mighty Boards. Petrichor's already been to Kickstarter before, a couple of years ago, did fairly well, and now it's back to not only offer the Petrichor Cows expansion but also the deluxe version of the main game. So Mighty Boards thought it'd be tremendously funny to send it to somebody in Scotland, because the definition of Petrichor itself is the smell of the ground after a long period of dry weather. And if you've been to Scotland, just like Petrichor, the game, the weather changes every 20 minutes if you leave it long enough. So thanks very much for this, Mighty Boards. Much appreciated. The only thing in that case I can say is don't bother with it. Terrible game. Hate it. Despise it. Rubbish. However, it does have coo-beasties. But joking aside, if you played the Petrichor at all in its previous versions, the idea was quite simple, is that you were commanding the very clouds of the sky, and the aim of the game was to effectively have these little raindrops accumulate in your clouds to the point where you would reach a downpour situation or even a rain situation, which would allow your raindrops to fall down from the sky, fertilise the ground, help you grow various plants, and therefore allow you to score. Simple as that. And it was all kept on scoring tracks. And there was little green things that don't taste of anything, and there was little red things that slightly smell of strawberries, and there was harvest dice in the middle that allowed you to harvest, and there was even a first player token which was in the shape of a sheep without a head or legs. Pretty gruesome, but I guess what's to be expected. However, in this next iteration, it's an expansion for Petrichor, which is just quite simply called Cows, or Coos if it was in Scotland. I hope they do that for the printed version up here. They add an additional aspect to it, which is coo-beasties, coo-beastie drop-ins, and also glorious methane, with the idea being that the cows themselves will introduce methane into the atmosphere, and itself has an effect on the actual temperature within the climate itself. And the idea is the game is you've got the ability to influence the amount of methane that is in the atmosphere, and therefore that will affect the temperature, and that will in turn, what they've brought in specific plants and tiles which are affected by the climate. The other thing is, as well as in the normal game, you would have an action phase, and that would then be followed very quickly by your weather phase. What they've introduced then is they've introduced like an additional kind of climate kind of action, which has an effect on kind of what can grow, the amount of rain that's available, the size of the clouds, things like that, which is kind of like an interesting twist. So as you're playing the game, you're trying to potentially either increase or decrease the amount of methane depending on what your goals are, what you're wanting to grow, and also at the same time maybe stop your opponents from being able to reach a certain threshold, so they're not able to grow their plants, take it to harvest season, and kind of follow points. The hats off to the kind of the presentation on the components. Again, these are obviously the prototype version, and but they're very close to the final design, but they may change before the final production of the Kickstarter itself, but still following the kind of the lovely kind of art that you have from Daniela Attard, David Churkop and David Turtsey have done a fantastic job in developing this. But one of the reasons I like it is it's not just an expansion which just adds on something slightly extra. It adds on an additional board, and with adding on that additional board, it kind of adds on a whole range of mechanics in order to expand it. Quite interestingly enough, there are, in the rules itself, it does allow you to play it with the honeybee expansion, which is available, and the flower expansion, which is also available. So if you're interested in this, the Kickstarter is running at the moment for the next couple of weeks, and there'll be a link in the notes within the YouTube video if you'd like to check it out yourself. So that is it's the Petrichor Cows expansion. If you like what you've watched, drop us a quick subscription, drop us a like, drop us a comment, tell other people about it. It's fantastic. Remember, but in the meantime, stay safe, roll sixes, and don't you be thinking about taking a